I need to borrow your photographer, Mark. You guys have some great shots on your website.
I will. To tell you the truth, Greg, the funny thing about it, it's mostly residents.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Yeah. We've got a bunch of retired people who just take pictures all the time. So we get like great shots. We're like, wow, that's phenomenal.
Do they just send them to you? I mean, do you pick them off social media? How do you get them?
We see them on social media, and then we just kind of reach out to them that way, and it's been pretty effective. So one guy's like, he's actually like upgraded his camera, and he's like, it's kind of funny.
We actually did some drone stuff last year for our website, which was really cool.
Oh, that is cool. We haven't done that yet. We need to. We need to do that. That is, you can get some amazing shots that way.
Yeah.
I'm happy you guys had a pretty uneventful weekend.
Yeah, thank God. We were really, really scared. Just because the law enforcement reaches out to the groups, the organizing groups, and they don't talk back. So we don't know. We're just trying to pick apart what we think might happen. And if that's the case, then we have to plan for the worst.
Yeah.
We have to assume that what happened on May 30 is going to happen again. So, and then it just becomes a numbers game, and you have to have as many numbers as they do.
Yeah, I was chatting with Colin all weekend about it. So
I've never seen so many cops. It was amazing.
It's good, man.
It was a little bit reassuring too. I mean, it's just been scary.
Oh, it has, man. Trust me, I know what you guys are going through. So we haven't had what you guys, but I know that it's just like you can feel the tension at all times.
It's tough.
It is.
But hopefully in the next 2 weeks here, things will start settling down. We got a town hall meeting next week. That's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bit of sarcasm?
Just a bit.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
Dripping off your lips.
Do you guys do town halls, Mark?
Yeah. Yeah. We just had one this last weekend. We've got a ad hoc committee studying the sheriff, and that was fun.
Be careful about getting off the sheriff contract if I were you.
We're not going anywhere, but sorry, Cody. Are we hijacking things? Greg and I are having a great time, by the way.
Yeah, I know. You guys are having your own side meeting, which you're welcome to continue when we're done here.
I can see in your face, you're like, can I get this going?
Yes, if you all are ready, and Sheriff Moore, not to do your job for you, but to nudge you along a little bit.
Yes. All right, it's 3:06. Apologize for being a little bit late here. We had a previous ad hoc committee meeting. I am here. Councilmember West, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, we're on to public comment, number 3.
Chair Humura, no public comment were submitted for any item today.
Thank you, Sebastian. Any items to add, delete, or otherwise? Cody?
Not from us.
Okay. Then we'll move on to regular agenda. Item 5, overview of the integrated resource plan.
So we have both Kirby and John from Pacific Energy Advisors on the call today. I never know what to call this, on the Zoom today. And this is a requirement that we have coming up. It's due September 1st, so we will be presenting this to the board for approval. We don't have a plan for you yet today. We just wanted to give you some background on what this is. And it'll be a very brief overview of what this plan, the purpose and what it contains, and what you'll be seeing at the board in a few weeks. I think we have a board meeting. So John DeLacy from Pacific Energy Advisors will take this item.
All right, thank you. And that was perfect introduction here. So it's really just kind of to set the stage for the plan that will be developed over the next couple of weeks. And then, we'll take it to the board for approval before its submission on September 1st. But what this is, it's a regulatory requirement, came out of legislation originally And all load serving entities, including, of course, community choice aggregators, the IOUs, ESPs, et cetera, need to develop resource plans and update those every 2 years. There's a 2-year cycle, and file those plans with the California Public Utilities Commission. The planning period here for the current cycle would be 2020 through 2030, so it's a 10-year planning period. The Energy Division at the Commission has developed a number of standardized sort of templates that are required to be completed as part of this process. So there is a narrative template, so kind of the format and table of contents of what needs to be included in the plan. And then there are data templates. There's a resource data template, which requires detail on all existing power contracts, all planned contracts, quite a bit of information that they are requesting. And then a third piece of the plan is what they call a clean system power calculator. And what that does is it quantifies the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with the portfolio that's in the plan. Really kind of the overarching requirement here is the state's goals with respect to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and the electric sector's role in that. And so the plans that are submitted will be evaluated on the basis of how much greenhouse gases would be emitted by the portfolio. Is the portfolio reliable? And also, a desire to minimize other pollutants, SOx and NOx and, particulate matter, et cetera, particularly in what have been identified as disadvantaged communities. So those are the primary criteria. But the main overarching sort of issue, though, is greenhouse gas. And so what will be required here are actually 2 plans. There'll be one that is consistent with an overall greenhouse gas emission limit for the electric power sector of 46 million metric tons by 2030, or in the year 2030, I should say. And then another plan that would be consistent with a lower limit, and that limit is 38 million metric tons for the sector as a whole. What's a little interesting here is in the 46 million metric ton plan, we'll be actually required to have a portfolio that emits an amount of greenhouse gas that has been assigned to San Diego Community Power. So it's not a cap, it's an actual target, which is kind of a unusual element of this requirement. For the alternative plan that can be filed under the 38 million metric ton, we can submit a portfolio that has lower emissions than what the benchmark would be. So there is an opportunity if San Diego Community Power wanted to really push the envelope on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, it can show its plan in that scenario, but not under the 46. So let me move on. I'll probably get a little bit more clear here. We can look at some numbers. So these are benchmarks that the CPUC has established that are consistent with those 2 kind of, overall resource plans, the 46 and the 38. And down at the bottom, you can see San Diego Community Power. We're expected to be about 43.5% of the San Diego area load in 2030. And so the allocated emissions benchmark is 1.768 million metric tons under the 46 million case, or 1.46 million metric tons under the 38 case. So again, for the plan that we submit under the 46, we're going to have to show emissions equal to 1.768 million metric tons in 2030. for the plan that's submitted under the 38, we can show a portfolio that has emissions at or below the 1.46 million metric tons.
Hey, John.
Please.
So when I saw this chart, this is everything as if it stays right now. There's no. I mean, I'm going to be surprised if San Diego Community Power doesn't grow between now and 2030. And I'm talking about citywide. I imagine there'll be some other cities that come along. So this is just a benchmark for what we're looking at right now as a snapshot of today, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And we'll do this again 2 years from now. Those numbers may change. So, but it's a snapshot in time. These are forecasts that the California Energy Commission actually prepared. Mm-hmm. And it's based on information that was provided in terms of the expected load of San Diego Community Power. But in terms of what the changes that'll happen through 2030, that's really an assigned forecast that the regulators gave to us.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
But larger point there too. A lot's going to change by 2030, right? So.
Yeah.
And it's very early for us to be developing plans like this. We're not even up and running yet. So, I mean, it is a challenging situation to try and be responsive and at the same time not feel like you're just sort of making things up, right? I mean,
yeah, no, and that's kind of what I was there's so many variables. I mean, I think that there's so many things that I could go on to more about what's going to happen by 2030 that I was just trying to say that what you're going with, this is just a snapshot right now. And we are so far from this that we have many things to work towards.
Yeah. We go to the next slide, please. Okay, so there's this concept of a reference system portfolio, and the CPUC Energy Division has performed modeling, and they have come up with what they consider to be the optimal resource mix under both those sort of tracks, the 46 and the 38. And so what they've established is their view of what would be optimal in the sense of least cost and also reliable, a mix of resources that would achieve those greenhouse gas emissions benchmarks for the system overall. Both of the plans, they're similar with respect to kind of the mix of new resources that are called for. Both of those include large amounts of new solar, wind, and battery storage, and also some long duration storage, particularly when we get out to around 2026. So long duration storage would be at least 8 hour in duration. Most of the lithium ion batteries that we see today are 4 hour, some are even 2 hour. But so long duration would be 8 hour or longer storage duration. That could be batteries. It could be pumped hydro storage is a common one. You're probably familiar with some projects that are trying to get constructed. There are other technologies as well. So that's kind of an emerging technology, but it's been identified as a system need really to help integrate the increasing amounts of renewables on the system. And then also the CPUC's reference system portfolio includes some out-of-state wind on new transmission. So their modeling suggests that because of the low cost of wind out in, let's say, Wyoming, it's cost effective to bring that in, even if we have to build new transmission to get it. So that's what they expect. And then visually, what it looks like, if we go to the next slide here, this will show the new resources in the plan. So again, this is just new, doesn't include what is already built. And you can kind of see the color coding here. You get a lot of yellow, which is solar, and a lot of the purple, which is increasing, especially in the latter part of the period, which is battery storage. And then a little bit of wind and kind of light blue at the bottom, and then real small amounts of pump storage, and then shed DR would be demand response. So that would be, programs where customers willingly will cut their usage for some form of compensation, and that can be deemed an alternative source of capacity, more or less. So this is really what the commission is deeming optimal, and there's a kind of a requirement / expectation that load serving entities fall in line with this, and at least to the extent that, let's say we put a plan in that was wildly different than this in terms of our resource assumptions, let's say it was all solar, there'd be, I think, an elevated kind of level of screening that would be applied with respect to, okay, how reliable is that plan and things of that nature. So I think it's being kind of worked out in terms of, there's this sort of push over control. The CPUC is sort of trying to assert some jurisdiction here in control, and the CCAs are trying to retain that autonomy. There's a little bit of tension there, but it's pretty clear the commission's expectation is that they're expecting to see plans that line up pretty well to what their reference system portfolio looks like.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I'm interested in is that it doesn't call out any like geothermal energy like in this at all, and I'm wondering, is that carried someplace in here that I'm just not seeing it? Or I mean, I'm interested because there's some plants coming online out in the Imperial Valley that are pretty significant producers, and they're using geothermal as their technology. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, no, you're seeing it right. So the geothermal in the commission's modeling didn't make the cut in terms of new resources. They are included in the existing stock, but they didn't make the cut this go around. Now it's interesting because 2 years ago we did this for the first time, actually in 2018, and geothermal was in the mix. And this time around, it's been displaced by I think pretty much kind of solar battery combination. But again, this is models have assumptions, and I mean it a lot of this, I think there can be a bit of a false sort of sense of precision and accuracy sometimes in the people doing the modeling. And I think to your earlier point, a lot can change. A lot can change even in 5 years in terms of technology. We're seeing declining costs on batteries. We're seeing certainly solar prices have changed dramatically. So I think we need to have a certain humility and kind of flexibility in our planning, but at the same time we have this regulatory requirement that really wants us to put out very specific ideas of what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
So and also it's not to say we can't do geothermal, new geothermal.
John, I got it. I understand completely what you're saying. I was just surprised not to see it there at all. So, but yeah, I know we can definitely, that doesn't limit us. That's just the guide that they're wanting us to follow.
That's right.
Mark, to your point anyway, all these things kind of fold in together, our regulatory compliance, these types of plans that we have to submit, and then what authority, John was touching on this, what authority the CPUC has over us, and that constant tension you see between CCAs and the CPUC of, the whole reason we formed is so that we can make our decisions locally. And so to the extent that we come, to a point where we ever want to push back on something, that's where we can take that step if we need to, and
Yep.
we have a regulatory and legislative kind of side of the house for those reasons.
Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so now this is total resources. So it brings in the existing generators as well as the new build that's in the plan. And geothermal does show up here, although it's a relatively small slice, but that's what's actually out there today. And then also, of course, we have the natural gas units that are likely to continue to be required for reliability reasons. But no new gas is included in the reference system portfolio that the commission's developed. So that's kind of what the overall mix looks like, at least according to the CPUC. And then if we go to the next slide, so that's sort of, you know, these are the issues that now we're going to need to work on is, you know, at least for planning purposes, what is our overall sort of renewable trajectory? Like, do we want to get to 100% by 2030 or 80%? You know, we need to have something for this process. I know we focused on kind of what we're going to do at start, and it's very much, you know, related to rates and economics. And I know that some of the members have, you know, plans, carbon reduction plans. And so, you know, I think this is where we'll need to just decide on what our target is through 2030 on the renewable side, and then possibly also on the greenhouse gas side. Particularly if we want to be lower than the benchmark under the 38 million metric ton. If we want to just kind of match that benchmark, then, you know, the answer's already been written for us. But if we, you know, want to lower emissions, then we'll need to decide on what that mix is going to be. Again, do we want to be 100% carbon free or as close to it as possible, or something less than that? And then the other elements of the plan, when you sort of get into the nitty gritty of it, is, all right, so, you know, beyond just the renewable content, you know, what is the anticipated mix of technologies? You know, that solar, wind, natural gas, batteries, et cetera. What is the portfolio expected to look like, both for energy and capacity? And then I think one that's a fairly important issue is, you know, how much of our expected resource or, you know, power is going to be from new build, new construction projects versus reliance on existing. And I think that, you know, to the extent that SDCP is building new resources, particularly new resources that have dependable capacity, you know, basically the RA, in the RA world, then that's beneficial to system reliability. And, you know, to the extent that we're you know, mostly relying on existing resources, then I think there's less of a contribution to reliability. And then the last piece is, you know, geographic sort of location or region that we expect the resources, where do we expect these resources to be sited? And there's a lot of information, you know, I think we can use a lot of information out of the reference system portfolio. It is good information. I mean, it's not sort of, you know, truth handed down from on high, but it's you know, a result of some pretty good modeling, and I think it's a fair kind of approach to planning. So where we don't have specific plans, say, I think we can rely on that and have a plan that's consistent. But where we do, you know, the real policy decisions that need to be made, for instance, what's our overall renewable content, or even, you know, geographically, where do we want to see the bulk of our resources? I think, you know, that's where you know, we want to reflect the preferences of the board clearly.
I think one thing I would like to add, I think this, what I keep going back to is that I think each one of our cities, we're really going to have to peel back our caps and our climate action plans and really decide what we, you know, all of us have these certain caps that have certain, you know, be this by 2030, this by 2035. I think we're going to really need to look at all those caps and come up with some numbers that'll help you guys define what we need to get to by that certain time. Because I think mine's more aggressive than most of the other ones, and I think we need to, you know, that is a promise I have made to my constituents. So I need to make sure that we are marching towards that. So I just want to make sure that that's something that I've been kind of asking for in the past, that we need to really look at each one of the caps and come up with some, where are we meeting at? You know what I mean? I think I've talked to you a little bit about that before, Cody, just as we move forward.
I have a question, if I may. John, you said that this plan goes through 2030. So it seems that this year, 2020, it's an important year, but you also mentioned that 2 years from now, we have an opportunity to update those numbers. What's the difference on this year versus 2 years from now, are we able to update those numbers again, say in 2024? What's kind of that process so we can understand a little bit better?
Yeah, so it's every 2 years. We'll be required to file a new plan, an updated plan. I think what is in the gray area is, if let's say we file this plan and we say we're going to do X, Y, and Z, there's a possibility that the commission tries to order X, Y, and Z, or somehow make sure that we do those things. And so there's a little bit of, clearly we want what we put out there to be consistent with our intent. But we also know that 2 years from now, we'll have new information and probably better information, frankly, because we're a very young, really pre-operational organization here. And so we will have an opportunity to update. But I guess the question is, well, what might happen once the commission receives these plans, and then they're going to make an assessment, overall, first of all, when the plans are all put together, is it a reliable system? Does it hit the overall GHG benchmarks? And what if it doesn't? Then they start, potentially saying ordering procurement like they did last year, where the commission ordered, essentially all the load-serving entities to bring forth a pro rata share of new resource development by, next year, right? So these reliability orders. So I think that's a concern that a lot of CCAs have, is it's a little ambiguous, a little, unclear about the so what, once these plans are filed, okay, what happens next?
Okay, thank you.
And for the most part, I mean, John, this is what you keep saying, is we're so young, we don't really have a lot of specifics. So we're going to be kind of, guesstimating, but to the point that we know that at least several of our member cities want to get to 100% renewable by 2030. By the time in the next 2 years, I imagine, if not in the next 6 months, the board will have adopted some sort of policy or target specifically saying how we'll get there. We would put this plan in line with at least some of those targets as well, and kind of keep iterating on those every 2 years. So I think the kind of guidance, and Mark, to your point, we can start to incorporate that into these plans now and then evolve over time. That gives us it sets our floor, and then our ceiling is often higher than what the state's going for anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. And I feel like we have the starting point, and I'm not completely clear on what that endpoint should be in 2030. And, that's, I think, what we need to kind of figure out over the next couple of weeks, at least as a straw proposal that we can bring back to you, or bring back to the board as part of it, when we bring the plan back.
Yeah. And we have the goals for each member city documented, so we'll share that with you. I think we probably already have, but we'll make sure you have that to show which cities have 100% goals by when. But the overarching Joint Powers Authority agreement states that we'll get to 100% no later than 2035, and preferably by 2030 for the cities that called it out. I imagine, though, that the board, if I'm just guessing, but that the board would probably say all of us will just get to 100% by 2030.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, since some of us have to do it, we might as well all do it together. So let's look, John, at what that would look like by putting that in this plan, and how binding is that for us.
Okay, perfect.
I think that's really good too, because it just gives us an idea. Because right now, I don't know. I know what the JPA document says, but I don't know how that works. And I think if we could show when we bring this to the board, how that plays out, that'll really help the board answer a lot of their questions. So I would really appreciate that.
Okay, I think then the next slide is just sort of a brief next step. So we'll be working on this draft, obviously working with Cody. And then the next board meeting, it looks like, is August 27th. And then that's convenient. So we'll be able to get approval, hopefully, before submittal on September 1st.
I have a question for Cody real quick too. So I kind of like that you're bringing these draft briefs to us for our input, so you can kind of work your way. And on other boards I sit, they kind of bring us what they're planning to give to the full board, and then it's so I think that this is a good way to move forward to where you can get some feedback. But I'm not sure as if we move forward that we might need maybe as we get further on, that we're doing a more final product prior to us seeing the board. Because it's hard. The one thing I would say is I think it's important that this committee reports back to the board what we saw. But if it changes significantly, it's hard for us to do that. So there's got to be a balance in there, and I'm leaving that to you to figure out. But that's I think there's somewhere that we might need to get there. So
yeah, it's tricky because these committee meetings, we have a regular schedule, and they're so far. It's 3 weeks in advance of the board meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
We just didn't have the time to finish this plan before this 4 weeks early.
No worries. And maybe that means that we need to move this meeting closer to the board or something like that. I mean, I think just think about that. I'm seeing what you're saying now, and there's probably something to look at to try to get somewhere in the middle of what we're talking about. So that's all I'm saying.
Right. And we moved them last time for another reason. I forget why. So we'll look at that and see.
Yeah, we moved them because Greg and I have had really busy schedules. So, but just something to think about.
Yeah.
All right, we're on to item 6.
Yeah, if there's nothing else on this, I mean, that feedback of, identifying how we get to 100% for at least some of our cities, if not all of them, is good feedback that we can see how to work that in. Unless you have any other feedback, happy to move on.
Nothing from me.
Do it.
Awesome. I think item 6, I'm going to pass this off to Kirby, but just to remind you what item 6 is we issued our first RFP for long-term renewable energy, and it closed, our RFP closed, I think 2 Fridays ago, maybe. And so Kirby is now digging deep into those proposals and sorting them out for us. And we had an ad hoc committee meeting where we can share kind of the confidential details with a few board members and started to wrap our heads around how to prioritize these projects. And, we're going to move forward with working through a short list and eventually presenting these to the board for approval within several months. So this is an early conversation, but just wanted to share the initial outcome with you. And this is information that Kirby can share publicly. So hand it off to you, Kirby.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, as Cody mentioned, we recently administered a solicitation for long-term California Renewables Portfolio Standard eligible products. And as Cody also mentioned, bids were due on Friday, July 24th. And we received many responses, and that was really great news. I think every time you administer a solicitation, there's a question lingering in the back of your mind: will the market react the way that I'm hoping they will? And in this case, the response was truly robust. I was pleased to see that there were 32 unique respondents. That's a big number, and that was great to see. Amongst those different respondents, there were a variety of different configurations or project options that were proposed, 84 in total. And amongst those responses, a variety of different renewable generating technologies were represented, including biogas, floating solar. So these are basically ballast mounted solar projects that are, going on water treatment ponds and so forth. Geothermal generating technologies were represented. And of course, nowadays, the lion's share of most responses to these sorts of RFPs are photovoltaic solar. And this was no exception. So a total of 71 of the 84 different project configurations utilized photovoltaic solar with or without battery storage. And then the balance of the responses were comprised of wind, and then one response was received from what we call a portfolio supply option, where the supplier essentially can draw from different projects in order to source the specified renewable energy volumes. You may recall that there was a suspicion that most, if not all, of these responses would be for the portfolio content category 1 or bucket 1 renewable energy product, which is typically the highest cost, most flexible in terms of its use under the compliance program product, and 82 of the responses fell into that particular category and addressed that product need, with the 2 remaining responses focused on bucket 2, and then a hybrid of bucket 1 and bucket 2. And then the last piece of information that I wanted to share with you all today was the fact that 14 of the 84 proposals or configurations were from projects located in San Diego County. So it was nice to see a truly local element of the responses. And just reflecting back on a point that Cody made, at this point in time, because we're still working our way through proposal evaluation, and it's important that we keep commercially sensitive proposal details confidential until we advance quite a bit further in the process. This is really all we're prepared to share right now, but we had a robust conversation with the Ad Hoc Contracts Committee and dove into a lot of the details, including pricing and quantities and so forth. Had a lot of good feedback and some guidance provided as to how we're going to be moving forward. And so I'm excited about what's to come. I think there's enough power proposed here to meet many multiples of SDCP's renewable energy requirements as they relate to the long-term kind of option or construct. And we'll definitely be reaching out in the future to keep you posted as to how progress evolves.
I just think that this looks great. I mean, I'm really excited about this. I'm really happy to see the bucket 1 was majority of them, and it even makes me more excited that Kirby was really excited about it, because that makes it even better. So.
Well, I think since we can't be too specific here, I'll just say that because I think you probably are all curious that the prices that we received, just generally speaking, were amongst the very lowest that we've ever received in administering these solicitations, and we've done a lot of that. So really excited to see kind of the curve come along and prices continue to fall, and of course, for SDCP to be able to take advantage of that. So,
yep.
Good to see some local projects out there too.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I'll add, just to provide context, is we are working through some early concepts around how to evaluate these bids, so some bid evaluation criteria. And we talked through that at length with the ad hoc committee about, here's the full list of respondents. Let's start to play around with how they'd shake out based on different criteria and different evaluations, and what kind of comprehensive package of bids we can put together based on those things. So we're just starting that out now, and we want to, I think that'll continue to evolve, but it was a good conversation. So we're thinking about that, and we'll eventually bring something to the board on that topic.
Great. Hey, Cody, thank you so much for bringing that up. I think I've been kind of looking at some of those evaluation criteria that of our other brothers and sisters in the CCE world use, and I would like to really tap into some of their knowledge that they're using, especially our LA brothers and sisters, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yep, we're
Okay.
we're looking at theirs, and you know, we've talked a lot to their staff as well. They evolve over time, right, as they mature as an organization and build up their reserves and have, you know, more money to spend, so to speak. They evolve that criteria, so we're definitely learning from them, which is helpful.
Good. Thank you.
Anything else on that item?
That was it. That was all I had.
Thank you, Kirby.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 7, committee member announcements. Mark,
Yeah, you've never looked better, Greg.
you
That's
see
all I
my
got.
background?
Yeah, no, I saw it.
Is it backwards?
That's right. No, it looks great, man. It's great. It's perfect. That's why I was saying it.
Well, Sebastian sent it to me, so I figured I'd try to use it.
Is mine up? Can you see mine?
Yours looks really good.
Mhm.
Good. Okay. Perfect. Yep. I'm good.
I'm good.
Great.
Therefore, we are adjourned.
Greg, you can run a meeting anytime.
Too much practice.
Thank you.